Hello, I'm Jim Demlin with Clark County Close-Up. Kara, thank you so much for meeting with us. Uh,
Absolutely.
oh, what is the Clark County Crisis Response System?
Okay. It is the mental health crisis response system for within Clark County. So there's a youth mobile crisis team and then an adult mobile crisis team separate from us. We are the team of designated crisis responders that are employed through Clark County Community Services.
What departments are involved in this?
Mhm. There is only designated crisis responders as far as community services with Clark County, and then there's CMAR, Community Mental Health Center, that has the adult mobile crisis intervention team, and then Catholic Community Services has the youth mobile crisis intervention team.
Okay. When was the crisis response system established?
Sure. So every county within Washington state has designated crisis responder teams. Every county in Washington has a behavioral health crisis response system. The crisis response system here became part of the Southwest region, so it involves Skamania County and Klickitat all lumped into one region back in 2016 when Beacon Health Options took over the funding for this crisis response system from the regional support network that had provided the services prior. As part of the state's healthcare reform implementation plan, and then the Southwest Washington region was the first region in Washington to implement the state's plan.
So why was it established? What was the need it was trying to fill?
Mhm. Yeah, it is to create a response for individuals experiencing a mental health crisis that are needing more than outpatient services provided by a mental health agency, something more that's 24/7 as a response and can connect an individual with a more advanced level of care, say psychiatric hospitalization or immediate safety needs that might need to be administered at that time with either law enforcement or a designated crisis responder or an intervention team to get an individual to secure setting, say an emergency room for care.
Okay. So can you tell me what exactly is the role of the designated crisis responder within this crisis system?
Sure. Yes. And so I'll first describe what a designated mental health professional used to be called that DMHP, now designated crisis responder back in 2018 became that title. I'll describe what that individual is, and then that will help to define the role a little bit more in this system and in this crisis response. So it is a designated crisis responder is a mental health professional with a master's degree in social work, counseling, and years of experience providing behavioral health assessments in a crisis setting, crisis intervention, and emergency room settings usually. Um, and so then, so it's a counselor with some experience in providing an assessment to see what kind of care an individual is in need of. A designated crisis responder, or DCR, if I have to use that language interchangeably, provides an investigation. It's a full legal and clinical investigation to determine if there is clinical and legal criteria that has been met to involuntarily commit an individual to a psychiatric hospital for up to 120 hours for that treatment. DCR is an independent decision maker, so we're not connected with a mental health provider or influenced in any way. And we evaluate the evidence that's given to us, either by family members, loved ones, hospital workers, community workers, and we determine the risk for the individual that's experiencing behavioral health crisis. And I'll go into risk a little bit later. A DCR testifies also at civil commitment hearings or these involuntary hold hearings, and also does completes files a petition for the continued court process.
Could you kind of just explain what the DCRs, the responders do, what they kind of do for the community and what they don't do?
Absolutely, yes. Designated crisis responders provide the most restrictive response in our community, and so we want to see that all prior interventions are tried first before it gets to this removing a person's civil rights and placing them in a hospital against their will. So designated crisis responder provides an evaluation of individuals in a behavioral health crisis to see if they meet criteria for this involuntary hold. And that would be if they're a danger to themselves, danger to others, or what's called grave disability, gravely disabled. And DCR provides an assessment to see if the individual is in need of that level of care to remain safe. A thorough investigation is involved where we're taking into account information provided by family, hospital workers, community mental health workers that know this individual. And then we determine if the need for psychiatric hospitalization would help that individual with stabilizing from their current crisis. So intervention teams would be providing then all of that level of care prior to getting to where DCR is asked to provide a response. So designated crisis providers, responders don't provide ongoing mental health counseling, ongoing behavioral health counseling. That would be providers in the community that offer that first. We don't provide medications. We don't provide hospital discharge planning. We do create a safety plan with an individual if we find that there's not criteria or reason enough to place them on a hold. And then we also don't provide evaluations to see if an individual should leave a psychiatric hospital or a medical hospital against medical advice. That's just not our role in the community. Our role is like a snapshot, taking a look at how an individual is presenting and seeing if there is criteria there with 7105, our CW 7105, to see if there's that evidence for an involuntary commitment.
How many DCRs are available in Clark County?
Mm-hmm. There are 8 full-time designated crisis responders. Myself included would be 9 then as program manager, but also designated crisis responder. And then we have 2 administrative functioning personnel on our team. So a team of 11 for crisis unit within Clark County.
Okay. Can you kind of describe what an individual in need of involuntary commitment, I mean, that's a big need, how they might be behaving?
Sure, certainly. So they're likely responding to voices, and that could be giving them a command to act on these voices. It could be walking into traffic, unaware of their surroundings, and maybe muttering or talking to themselves. So you're seeing a visual and hearing that this person is responding to these voices. It could also be an individual very depressed to the point that they can only think of a way out, and that is, in their mind, an escape through the form of suicide. So an individual is experiencing a behavioral health crisis that could be mental health or substance use disorder, and they are not able to care for themselves. So they're not recognizing that need to care for themselves either by their basic health and safety needs being taken care of, as in they're not recognizing the need to eat, drink fluids, seek shelter, be clothed, basic needs, or the need for sleep. That's where we are getting into that area of gravely disabled. So they are unable to care for themselves outside of a safe, structured setting, as in a psychiatric hospital for the time being. And then after this care is provided, they'd be able to return back to a usual level of functioning or a usual way of living, and they'd be fully restored or back to seeking treatment and usual medications and therapy that are best for their mental health care. An individual could have made an attempt to take their life, as in they are expressing that they are wanting to die, or suicidal statements are being made. Maybe they've made an attempt, maybe they are voicing that they intend to take their life, and that is where they would have the mental health disorder, like a depression, a depressed mood that would be coming out. And again, that's like voices, but it's commanding them to take action. Like they can't think of another way out except for taking their life.
Can you describe a somewhat typical scenario of how your team responds? For example, how are they notified, and then what happens to the individual that needs support?
Yes, good questions. I sure appreciate your time. So, a designated crisis responder will receive a call either from law enforcement officers. We greatly partner with them. Vancouver Police Department call us quite consistently, and Clark County Sheriff and all the different law enforcement entities. So they will call in through the Southwest Washington Regional Crisis Line, 1-800-626-8137. That's a 24/7 service with crisis counselors answering that line. They An individual could be brought to an emergency room by law enforcement and they're in need of this kind of care. They're initially assessed by a hospital worker, and then the hospital worker calls us and asks us to come see an individual for an ITA, Involuntary Treatment Act evaluation. So a DCR will evaluate an individual at an emergency room, a medical floor at the hospital. Maybe they've been admitted for medical reasons and mental health symptoms become pretty strong and evident. And so we've also seen individuals at our local evaluation and treatment center here in our community. There's 72 beds for a psychiatric hospital here. So we'll see individuals at that facility. At the Clark County Jail or at different community mental health centers, crisis wellness center, triage center. So the DCR dispatches out into the community with that crisis line call or law enforcement call. We dispatch from this office that's behind me here. It's just an office we dispatch from with either an intervention team, that youth or adult mobile team I talked about, or with a law enforcement or alone at a hospital setting. An individual may not be taking any medication for the mental health and they're having symptoms such as depression, suicidal thoughts with a plan, or thoughts that are affecting their behavior, or they may be paranoid about individuals that they usually trust. So that's how we're notified, and that's how we respond. And then for that individual, their care, they're informed at the first assessment time that we meet with them. They're informed of their legal rights. We actually hand them a piece of paper as we're reading out these rights to them, but they have it also in writing of who their attorney is for this process. There's a civil commitment attorney provided to them, phone number for that attorney, and they can reach right out to them. And we inform them at the end of our investigation or evaluation of our outcome of what we have seen as far as a risk. And we let them know we'll return with papers, which is a legal petition we write for their involuntary hold. So they have it in writing as far as what we've seen for the concerns for them. And then they are taken to an evaluation and treatment center, psychiatric hospital, for the level of care that they're needing. So they would go from an emergency room or from the jail to a psychiatric hospital for that treatment for up to 120 hours, 5-day commitment.
Oh, okay, thank you. Now, are there some recent laws that help guide your response?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Well, always in existence has been RCW, Revised Code of Washington 7105, and that is the Involuntary Treatment Act. And that is where we're evaluating an individual to see if they're a danger to themselves, others, gravely disabled, or damage to property. But recently, January 1st, there was a change to the Revised Code of Washington 7105, where now the initial time frame for an individual to be involuntarily held, involuntary initial detention, changed from 72 hours. So people have called it a 72-hour hold. Now it's a 120-hour hold. So it's a 5-day initial detention. There's also Ricky's Law, which came into effect April 1st, 2018. And that's where a designated crisis responder may evaluate an individual for a substance use disorder in that same criteria, a danger to themselves, others, or gravely disabled. And then they are placed at a SWIMS facility, they call it, but it is a facility for that involuntary commitment for a substance use disorder, and a full court process is a part of it. And they receive that treatment to remain safe at that time.
So briefly, for the layperson, when should a designated crisis responder be called to respond, and when should another service intervene?
Yes. So designated crisis responders greatly rely on, with only having 8 full-time, greatly rely on the intervention teams in our community. And they should be the first call out through that crisis line. That's how an intervention team is dispatched. And that's where an initial level of conversation happens to see if that individual is willing and wanting care and treatment at a mental health agency, maybe, or their needs met by maybe a peer support in the community, and that is a person with a lived experience and can help guide them through mental health process if they are interested in that. A designated crisis responder would be called either by that intervention team or law enforcement or hospital workers, community workers after that kind of care has been offered to an individual and there's still a great risk where that person is acting on their thoughts as depressed mood or suicidal or um, distorted thoughts, or their thoughts are not a usual healthy focus. And that's when a DCR would come in and provide an investigation. So it should be intervention team, mental health workers in the community, and then getting to the point of that most restrictive on that continuum of this person is in need of this kind of hospitalization to be stable and safe, and they've got high risk. Now we need to call a DCR to come in and provide that assessment.
Okay. You gave the number where people should call if they need that service. Can you give it to us again?
Sure. Southwest Washington Regional Crisis Hotline, and that is available 24/7. Crisis counselors answering that line, and that is 1-800-626-8137. 24/7 every day.
Well, thank you so much for sharing the information about this valuable program.
Thank you. Appreciate it.